Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio.
Here, and I think you made some progress. The President of the United States has made it very clear, holding Americans is a liability. We're working to change the feeling that it is okay to have hostages, to make it clear that we are going to bring every single American home. And we made progress. We brought 175 people home, over 100 Americans, others at allies in Israel, other places. I see some of you here in the room tonight. But we're not going to stop. We're not going to stop until all Americans are home. Now, Secretary Rubio, who we're really appreciative is here with us today, has made it a clear priority. In fact, he let Iran know that they are a state sponsor of wrongful detention. And he has put other countries on notice, not just Iran, anyone that holds American citizens, Russia, Afghanistan, countries in Africa, that it's not okay and we will not stop until they're home. I want everybody to know our success is driven by a number of things. First and foremost, it's driven by the President of the United States, President Trump's vision to get to peace through strength. And that is why we're succeeding, not only on the hostage side, but it's why he's succeeding broadly. The second thing is a group of people, the FBI, state, our National Security Council, that are committed to bringing people home. And these are people that I am privileged to work with because they risk their lives. Some people don't know, they're behind the scenes. But I know how much they make a difference. And I know when I see when President Trump unleashes talent, what we can do, how many people we can bring home. So I'd like to introduce you to our Deputy Director at the FBI, Deputy Director Christopher Rea, who's been a huge partner with us, speak out with the state, in bringing people home. So thank you.
All right, good morning. Thank you, Special Envoy Bowler, and thank you to everyone involved in organizing this important commemoration. I want to begin by thanking Secretary Rubio, as well as Special Envoy Bowler, for their advocacy and support of the interagency efforts to bring home all Americans held hostage or wrongfully detained abroad, and to get justice and answers for the families. This kind of advocacy is crucial. It keeps the momentum alive and ensures their stories are never forgotten. I also want to thank Dr. Gorka for his leadership and insight. Over the years, the FBI's and the Hostage Recovery Fusion Cell have worked to secure the recovery of many Americans held hostage. But the case of Bob Levinson hits especially close to home. For nearly my entire career, we have been searching for Bob. It is deeply personal to me, and I'm extremely motivated as a Deputy Director of the FBI to bring closure to his family. As most of you know, Bob spent nearly 3 decades in service to our nation, including 22 years as an FBI special agent. Quite simply, he was one of ours. Our evidence suggests that Bob died in captivity in Iran, and he is the longest held American hostage in U.S. history. Today, unfortunately, marks 19 years since his abduction, and tomorrow The Levinson family should have been celebrating Bob's 78th birthday. The urgency to uncover the facts of Bob's disappearance has never been greater. It would be deeply troubling to reach the 20-year mark without knowing what happened to him. The Levinson family's courage and advocacy have helped fuel years of tireless work by the FBI, a hostage recovery fusion cell, and our interagency partners who continue to develop new leads and intelligence with the hope of resolving the case before Bob's next birthday. Last year, as most of you saw, we released 5 posters seeking information on those we believe responsible for his kidnapping, detention, and probable death. We have kept this story front and center, and we will never stop. Additionally, we've shared a list of those involved in this crime with our interagency and foreign partners so they can pursue justice if the opportunity arises. I'm deeply grateful to our agents, our employees, our investigative teams, and all the agency partners who have worked so hard to try to bring Bob home. They have not wavered in their pursuit of answers, and they continue to push forward every day. They are fighting not only for Bob and his family, but for the many, far too many, other families facing the same unimaginable circumstances. We will not back down. We will never abandon our own. Our mission is clear. Bring our citizens home and ensure those responsible face American justice. Thank you.
Hello, everyone here at the State Department. I wish it was on a happier occasion, although we do have things to celebrate in terms of Americans that have been returned, but also we remember those who have not returned. I want to open, first of all, just by stating the obvious. The United States is currently engaged in an operation targeting one of the world's leading hostage takers, the world's leading sponsor of terrorism, the regime in Iran. And first, I think we would all take a moment both to offer our thoughts, our prayers, and our condolences, and to honor the families of those who have fallen, the 7 Americans who have lost their lives in the initial hours of this operation. Incredibly brave Americans, and you saw 6 of them dignified return over the weekend, and we all are all in awe of the service of their bravery, of their courage, and our hearts and our support extend out to the families in this very difficult moment, and the families of these incredible heroes. And heroic things are happening all the time, some of which will never make it to the headlines, but American men and women in uniform are conducting an extraordinary mission with extraordinary efficacy and efficiency and impact. The goals of this mission are clear, and it's important to continue to remind the American people why it is that the greatest military in the history of the world is engaged in this operation. It is to destroy the ability of this regime to launch missiles, both by destroying the missiles and the launchers, destroy the factories that make these missiles, and destroy their navy. I think we are all seeing right now the threat that this clerical regime poses to the region and to the world. They are trying to hold the world hostage. They are attacking their neighbors. They are attacking neighboring countries, their energy infrastructure, their civilian population. They're attacking embassies. This is a terrorist government. This is a terroristic regime. And we are seeing them conduct terrorism using nation-state elements, using weapons like missiles and one-way attack drones. And the objective of this mission is to destroy their ability to continue to do that. And we are well on our way to achieving that objective every single day with overwhelming force, with overwhelming precision. The military, the United States military, the men and women in uniform are conducting an extraordinary operation. There are not a lot of cameras down there covering what they're doing, as opposed to some of the other images that you may see from some of the cities and capitals nearby. But I want everyone to know your military is getting the job done. And every single day, this regime in Iran has less missiles, has less launchers, their factories work less, and their navy is being eviscerated. And the world is going to be a safer and a better place when this mission is accomplished. And we are here today, obviously, on something that touches right on Iran, but I think, unfortunately, it's not just limited to Iran. And we're here on the 3rd U.S. hostage and wrongful detainee day, and it's a day that exists because families and loved ones refuse to let their loved ones be forgotten. We have this day to celebrate those who return, to honor those who perished in captivity, and commit to returning those who are still in detention and holding also the perpetrators of this accountable. Last year marked 10 years of what they call SPIHA, the Hostage Recovery Fusion Cell. These were entities that were created with a specific mission of bringing Americans who were justly detained, bringing them home. And because of this mission, because the heart of this mission really can be captured in one word, and that one word is homecoming, reuniting people to their loved ones. 4 years ago, 50 plus families in the Bring Our Families Home campaign created the flag that flies here today. It's a symbol of solidarity, it's a symbol of resolve. It's flown in honor of Americans brought home over the past 3 years and the Americans yet to be brought home to their families. And many of the families and the returnees and the advocates who made those moments possible are with us here today. And we want to thank you for your advocacy, for never allowing us or anyone to forget those Americans that are justly detained. And we're especially grateful to those who themselves were detained. You know, it would be perfectly understandable if you decided, I'm back home, I'm going to go on with the rest of my life. Your willingness to step forward, to tell your stories, and to ensure that other Americans who are similarly situated to the way where you once were are not forgotten. We're truly grateful. Your persistence, your courage, and your love for your family members continues to drive this effort in days like today. As was already pointed out, March 9th marks the day that Robert Levinson went missing in Iran, and actually it was in a case I was also very involved in as a United States Senator, dating back to my very first day in the Senate. In fact, one of the first meetings I had, and to this I credit my former colleague, Senator Bill Nelson of Florida, introduced me to this case as soon as I got elected, and because of Levinson's ties to Florida, and we remained on that case throughout my career in the United States Senate. And it's one we will not forget. It's indicative of two things. The fact that Americans are taken all over the world, but it is particularly a reminder of the nature of the regime that we're dealing with in Tehran. We're honored to have his sons here today, Dan and Doug, with us. Thank you for being here. We appreciate it. Today, in recognition of their extraordinary dedication, and really everyone's here, but in particular, we've dedicated the flag flown here today to the Levinson family.
I prayed for everything last night. I prayed for the event to go well. I prayed for the weather. I prayed for all of the things, for the panelists to have confidence. I forgot to pray for wind. And so we didn't get wind.
That's my flag.
It's yours now.
Yeah.
It is yours now.
I'll see you guys.
Going down again?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Wow. Adam Bowler.
Free to take any seats you prefer, with the exception of the ones with the placards.
Yeah, no problem.
Right here in the front, Cookie. Right here. Kidding.
This is the end of hostage diplomacy, and we will stand strongly by until all Americans are released from any country. That includes Iran, that includes Afghanistan, and that includes any country that holds Americans.
Thank you, Holly. Thank you to everyone here at State, not just my boss, Marco, who is also the National Security Advisor, but also the Secretary of State, but to everyone from the Speaker's office, Dustin, to Adam, for this great honor for addressing or opening our panel today. What we witnessed just a few moments ago on the balcony, the raising of the official flag, it's more than just a ceremony. It is a declaration of American resolve, strength, and resilience. That flag traces its lineage back to the original hostage crisis of 1979. As Secretary Rubio stated, Iran is the very worst hostage-taking nation in the world. Remember, the first crisis, our American diplomats held hostage for 444 days after the so-called revolution. The design of that flag represents vigilance, unity, and resolve. Today, it represents, for us here, something more. The enduring commitment of the United States under President Trump's leadership to get our citizens home. You heard the figures. Under President Trump's leadership, we have brought back more than 100 American citizens with not one red cent in ransom being paid. That's in the space of just 1 year. Our commitment isn't simply vocal, it is backed up by action. We in the Trump administration do not forget our citizens. We do not abandon Americans, and we will not tolerate hostage diplomacy. Period, full stop. For me, I didn't even realize until right before the inauguration, because I'm a CT guy, I'm a counterterrorism guy, have been for about 30 years. I didn't fully understand what other things fell under my directorate of the National Security Council. I thought I was just going to do counter jihadi stuff. I've been waiting 26 years for this job. I'm a very happy man. And then when I was told hostage affairs and wrongful detention belong to me and our director, our incredible team. I'll give a shout out now to Julia, my director for hostage affairs. For me, things changed. Some of you will know this from the Speaker reception last year, but most of you probably won't. I am lucky to live in the greatest nation on God's green earth. I am blessed to be a free man. But I bring baggage to my job as Senior Director for Counterterrorism in the White House, responsible for hostage affairs and wrongful detention. Why? Because my father spent 6 years in a political prison in a dictatorship. interrogation, tortured after his arrest by secret police, 2 years in solitary. 2 years, not 2 weeks, not 2 months, 2 years. And then 2 years down a prison coal mine. So I bring a certain level, not through personal tragedy, but through my family history, of being able to relate to what you, former hostages, and the families of former hostages go through. But it wasn't because of that baggage I brought to my new position that we take this job so very, very seriously. It's because of who sits behind the Resolute desk. Day one of this administration, I walked into my SCIF, my secure compartmented information facility where we do all our classified work. And because I'm a bit old school, I got a whiteboard. I lit the whiteboard up against one of our safes, one of our vaults. And I got out a magic marker. And I made a list of the 5 most important things that matter to the president, which he had communicated to us as priorities. Most of them were classified, except the first one, at the very top. Number 1 was U.S. hostages. Not because that's my job description, but that's because the president told us it is his number 1 priority. Because that's who he is. We leave no man or woman behind, and we will not allow to use our citizens as pawns on some diplomacy hostage chessboard. We are raising the costs for those who would attempt to detain Americans in the first place. You heard Secretary Marco. The first state sponsorship of wrongful detention of U.S. citizens occurred just a few days ago with regards to Iran. But bringing those people home after what the Spiha's office, the FBI, Adam Lawler himself, you haven't lived until you traveled to Kabul without a security detail because Adam didn't want one in the middle of the night just to bring back an American citizen. When the secretary said, risking our lives, hang out with Adam Lawler long enough and you will. But it's for a good cause. But bringing them home, and that was just an incredible event, flying back home with an innocent American citizen who had been whisked off the streets of Afghanistan without even his family being told he'd been taken. But bringing them home is not the end of the story. The individuals, the families we're about to hear from on our panel know that better than anyone. They will speak not only about their captivity, but about their resilience, about rebuilding after their liberation by the Trump administration, about the challenges of coming home and the support systems that matter in those first few hours and days and then weeks and months. The flag we raised today represents our resolve to bring Americans home. The stories you're about to hear represent the very best of the human spirit and American strength. Today's panel reflects our commitment to bringing Americans home and supporting those who have survived the horrific practice of hostage diplomacy. I will now invite up to the floor our participants and then our moderator. First, you've seen the iconic photographs in the snow as he was returned to America and to meet the president, wrongfully detained in the Russian Federation. I welcome Mark Fogel to the floor. Wrongfully detained by the regime in Afghanistan, my good friend, George Desmond. Put the phone down, come on.
give more support to family members. I understand, correct me if I'm wrong. Israel, if one of your loved ones gets taken, you get the salaries that paid by the government so you can focus 100% of your time on your loved one's case.
That is certainly true. There's a pretty wide gamut of services offered to the families of hostages, including salaries and other supports, which allowed me and many others to engage full-time, be it domestically or abroad, in advocacy work on behalf of our individual hostages, but also more broadly. And look, as I'm sure all of your families and probably everyone in this room understands, it's a very disabling thing to have a family member hostage, whether by a state or, in our case, a terrorist organization. And so that sort of support was really critical. And at the end of the day, giving someone like me the freedom to be much more active on, in my case, international, but also on the domestic stage. And it was an absolute necessity in the case of the Israeli hostages for advocates domestically and abroad to, with the help of the U.S. government, to pressure the Israeli government to come to agreements that will get people home.
Thank you. Now, George, you've talked about your wife. She's here, she's amazing. We know that spouses and wives and families bring people home. I want you to talk about a different part, which is your employer, because you had a unique case where your employer played an important role in supporting you and your wife. What can other major companies learn from Delta if their employee experiences something similar?
Yeah, indeed. My case was special because of the company was involved in my liberation. In my case, my job is very important. My wife knows it. You know, I'm an aircraft maintenance technician with Delta Airlines. I love my job. I love aircraft. I love airplanes. I love flying. I'm a pilot also. One of the first things that I had in mind was my job when I was taken captive. And my first ever phone call to my wife from captivity, 6 months after my capture by the Taliban, was if the company I worked for knew my case, that I was being kidnapped by the terrorist organization, the Taliban, de facto government in Afghanistan. And so I was preoccupied about it. I did not know, I learned with time that Delta was working along with my wife in my liberation with the government, and I learned about it afterwards. It is important for an individual to understand that the company, in my case, for example, in my case, Delta Airlines didn't think about me as a number. I was one of the members of the family, Delta. And they advocated for my liberation, and in return, they're getting the loyalty and the best work from their employees. I always felt at home at work, and what other companies can learn about this kind of situation is that a company plays a very important role in the liberation, and the best thing, the best option for them is to play a role with the company that support them. An employee is not only an individual, not only part of a number, but they have family, they got friends, they got co-workers, they got this. It's a very important part of the machinery of an company. So that's a very good example to put out to the industry how Delta work and play a very significant role in my liberation.
Thank you, yeah, more and more companies should. Ronald, you had a unique experience of visiting President Bukele in El Salvador before coming home. Looking back, what do you think about when you see pictures from this part of your journey home?
When I look at those pictures, I think of the moment I realized what we were going through was something much bigger than I had imagined initially.
George, guys, we'll put the phone down. Come on. Liberated from Venezuela, Ronald Oribia. And father of Gaza hostage, Segui Dekel Gen, Jonathan Dekel Gen. And then lastly, to moderate our esteemed panel from the McCain Institute, Pedro Pizarro. Thank you, God bless.
Good morning. Thank you, Dr. Gorka, for your leadership, your advocacy, your partnership. My sincere thank you as well to Director Rhea, Spear Bowler, Secretary Rubio, President Trump, to the SPIHA team, Adam, Dustin, Macy, Jeremy, Sam, and more. Thank you for organizing today's event and for the work you do every day on behalf of families of those who are held hostage and wrongfully detained. My name is Pedro Pisano, and I'm the director of the John McCain Freedom for Political Prisoners Initiative at the McCain Institute. Before I say anything else, I want to say thank you to our partners who have been in this fight from the very beginning. The James Foley Foundation and Hostage U.S. Long before many of these cases received national attention, they were standing with families, building expertise, and insisting that Americans taking abroad will not be forgotten. We would not be here without them. I also want to recognize Ambassador Carstens, who's here in the room, former SPIHA, whom we're lucky to have as our inaugural senior distinguished fellow. Thank you, Ambassador Carstens.
That had taken months, and the tireless effort of many officials and so many people. And he thanked God that moment, and so did I. So when I look at those images and those pictures, I realized that we were not only hostages or wrongful detainees being released, we were witnessing high-level diplomacy between countries. And it was very significant, something I will never forget. When I think of that day, I feel deep gratitude for President Bukele, for President Trump, for Secretary of State Marco Rubio, for so many U.S. officials that made possible our release. And I will for always be very grateful for giving us a chance not only to be here today, but having lived our release the way we did.
Thank you for sharing that. Mark, Russia uses the legal system and criminal charges in ways that many argue are politically motivated. Do you feel like this is what happened in your case?
Certainly. I would like you to change the Russian legal system. That's an oxymoron. It's not a justice system, it is an injustice system. And there's a reason why Russian literature is so rich and deep in prison literature, whether it goes from Chekhov to Solzhenitsyn to Navalny's wife. They have perfected, well, I don't want to say perfected, but this is not a system that is new in Russia. I mean, it wasn't a Soviet system, it's going back to the Tsarist system. This is this seems to be a pillar of their life to me. And it was stunning when a Russian friend of mine came to visit me in the colony I was in, And she had said to my wife that, you know, I am one of the only Russian adults I know that this is the first time I've gone to visit somebody in a prison. All of my other friends have had this experience. So I think that is a really important story to understand that Russian injustice system. And the people that I met, who numbered in the thousands, because I was moved from cell to cell, jail to jail. We were in what were called Stolipin trains that we were given a very macabre tourist look at, you know, Russia in these trains, or cattle cars that they moved us around. That meeting all of these people and all of these stories, that one very affluent man had told me, just remember, Mark, we are all political prisoners in this country. It's just not you who are part of this political game. We all live this. And to hear those stories and to get a better understanding when I was living and teaching in Moscow, it became very apparent when I left Moscow that Moscow is not Russia. That when you leave Moscow, you are leaving a European city that has all the markings of a Western liberal democracy, but it's a facade. And you know, I feel in some of those cases of conversations I had with people, the night that the Ukraine war started, one of the many external things that happened while I was incarcerated there for the 3.5 years, there was a KGB colonel who became an Olympic coach in Russia. He spoke English very well. There was another person who was a graduate of American University in that cell. And as they were chatting, you know, really with a lot of energy about what was happening in the country, and the two explained to me what they were doing as I wanted to get in it. One of them said, well, we were debating if there's going to be another revolution in the country. And we've decided we don't really think that's going to happen, because we figure about 35% of our population is in some way part of the security system of this nation. And that 35% of KGB, underground, FSB, whichever acronym you want to use for Russia, from NKVD up the whole way through, 35% of the people are embedded in families, in schools, and universities. And they saw that, and this was such a strange thing for me to see with my visions of what governments and justice systems do, that this was something that they thought, oh, we're going to be okay because we have all those people looking at us. So that's, I think, encapsulates some of what you say about the Russian injustice system.
Thank you, Mark. And before Jason, Razayan, and his wife leave, thank you for being here. Thanks for sharing that insight into the Russian legal system, because there's still Americans in Russia. There's still many political prisoners, so hopefully we can get
Andrei Hachachurian is somebody who I spent 3 weeks in a cell with him. We became very close. As we become close, just being part of this group that we use loosely, you know, you just feel that. You know, Andrei is a wonderful human. I sympathize with his family, and his mother is here, and I really, really pray every day to bring him and all the other ones home. Please, bring them up.
All right, last round of questions from me. So feel free to both answer or not answer or conclude. So, Jonathan, God forbid there's another mass hostage-taking event. How can democracies better respond from your perspective?
Well, look, it really does depend on who the hostage-taking body is. But I think that overall, and I think the United States has gotten much better at this, in the 2.5 years or so that I am in this community, this family that nobody wants to belong to, in terms of preparing ahead of time for what that means. Having the ability to apply sanctions quickly and effectively would be one. Especially in our case, a terrorist organization, in terms of its ways of funding itself, which are very imaginative and myriad and based globally. If those can be attacked almost immediately by the United States and its partners, that would be helpful. For example, the other thing is that in our case, the mass hostage taking, there were hostages from, I believe, initially 24 countries taken, nationals of 24 countries.
All right, Ronald, one question for you, and then we'll conclude with George. So, Ronald, for families still waiting in Venezuela and elsewhere, what lessons did you learn about staying engaged, staying visible, staying hopeful?
Well, in my case, I would say that the best lessons or advice I could give come from what my own family did. They, and I will probably go through some of those now. Well, first, they stayed organized and involved. They created a network of family and friends, and they met regularly, and they approached this as like a project, I would say. Basically, planning, assigning responsibilities, and following up regularly, and that allowed them to stay together, united, and active. Second, they stayed visible and open to government support and support from the different NGOs. They stayed in permanent communication with the SPIHA office, and my apologies if they were excessively in communication with the SPIHA office. But they did. And also my daughter Mafe and my brother's girlfriend Emma, they visited U.S. officials here in Washington and organizations like the Foley Foundation, Hostage U.S., and Global Reach. And through those efforts, they were able to find, or were shown basically, a path to be able to take our cases to senior administration officials like Sebastian Gorka, Christopher Landau as well, and also some other family members and friends contacted their Congress representatives, and basically they found a way of getting advocacy for the release of all Americans back in Venezuela. I would say, probably 2 more. Yeah, because I think they did, quite a few things for which I'm very grateful as well. So I would say that third, they created a community with other families from other detainees or hostages. Thanks to the SPIHA office, they get in contact, they shared information, and they supported each other. They also took care of their mental health, and thanks for Hostage U.S. who provided psychological support to all of them, or well, not all of them, to my sister, my children, my girlfriend, and they were able to keep fighting, coping with fear and uncertainty without collapsing. And I would say that last is that they kept hope alive. My daughter Jessica met, she virtually created this gathering where they spiritually supported each other, and based on faith, prayer, and intention. So for my family, faith was a cornerstone in this process. I would say that my lesson out of this is that many small and large actions can make a real difference. And finally, I would say that for families still waiting, this type of work can make a difference and become the lifeline that brings their loved ones back home.
Yeah, thank you. And George, last question. bring us home. You joked in one of your first interviews that you hope to get back to traveling soon. So after your experience, what will you do differently?
Well, yeah, you're right. I remember that joke, and Adam just reminded me of one of the countries that I was, when I boarded the plane to freedom. Adam approached me and said, "Hey, George, here's a list of the countries you cannot go in." And I went through the list. There were about 14 countries, and I had been to all of them except for like 3 of them. The next one was going to be Eritrea. And I said, just now, when we met, he says, "Thank God you didn't go to North Korea." I said, "No, I went to North Korea." But the one I was meaning was Eritrea, and no, I haven't go there. I don't think I will go. So, yeah, it is very important to know that traveling is beautiful. It's an amazing right, I would say, that we all have. And we tend to forget that our passport as Americans is a target. I entered Afghanistan with my Georgian passport, but the moment the Taliban went to my hotel room and found out not one, but 2 American passports, that's when they decided to keep me as a as a hostage. I definitely will change I have changed my travel ways, and when I was taken, I realized that I was not the only person suffering in that hole, and they kept me for more than 2 years. My wife was suffering a horrible nightmare. My mother-in-law was suffering the horrible nightmare. My parents, my family was suffering. My co-workers, my friends, relatives, everybody suffers. It's a big community, the one that suffers when one person is taken, and they all advocate for the freedom. So they're all spending all this unnecessary grief and time to try to get you back home. A lot of times, unfortunately, it doesn't happen. So my ways have changed in which before I go anywhere, I check the website from the State Department, and I make sure there's no warnings, there's no problems with that destination. Second, I will check with my lovely wife and make sure that it's okay for me to go to that location. And then I would go on to check with friends and family and try to see if there's any objection of me taking that trip. When I came back this January 5th to work, I was in Tbilisi, Georgia, and I had to make it back to Delta Airlines destination. And my plan originally was to go by ground from Tbilisi to Turkey through Kosovo and Bulgaria and all those places. And my wife stopped me from doing that. And she says, "Well, if Dr. Young says okay, you can take that trip back by ground back to the States." So we contacted Dr. Young, and his reaction was like, "Oh, please take pictures, let me know." So that didn't go well. At the end, I didn't come back by ground. I ditched the plans and made one with only one stop in Turkey because I wanted to visit Nicaea, and I visited Nicaea in the places of where the Creed of Nicaea was established and all that stuff by Constantine the Great. So definitely we need to be more conscious of the people that suffers with us, and I have learned my lesson. Definitely, my travels have changed.
Thank you, George, and thank you all for sharing your experiences, but also for your courage and your advocacy. Today we remember those who are still waiting, we honor those who have come home, and we recommit ourselves to a simple principle: no American unjustly held will be left behind. Thank you so much. Promise of citizenship, that your government shall do everything in its power to bring you back to your loved ones. In the past year alone, President Trump, Secretary Rubio, Mr. Bowler, Dr. Gorka, and this administration have brought back over 100 Americans back home to their loved ones, as well as hundreds of political prisoners in Belarus and Venezuela, to name just 2 countries. We know that that momentum will continue until no one is left behind. Thank you for your continued advocacy, partnership, and leadership. Today we're joined by individuals whose lives reflect both the cost of wrongful detention and the power of persistence. Jonathan Deckelhen, representing his son Sagi Deckelhen, who was abducted on October 7th, 2023, held in Gaza for 498 days and released on February 15, 2025. George Glesman, held by the Taliban in Afghanistan for more than 2 years and released in March 2025. Ronald Toribio, detained in Venezuela and released as part of a negotiated exchange in July 2025. And Mark Vogel, detained in Russia beginning August 2021 and released on February 11th, 2025. Thank you all for being here. Jonathan, you've been here before on this stage. You were here the first year of this commemoration. You were here advocating for Sagi's release 5 months into his abduction, which nobody knew then would take another excruciating 11 months for it to end. What does it mean to be here today after everything your family has endured?
Well, first, thank you for inviting me and for inviting us. It's a rebirth on multiple levels, really. I find it ironic and painful in a way that we're gathering today. I just want to extend sort of my empathy and sympathy for those that are here perhaps online, for those being illegally detained in Iran. I know exactly what it's like to have a loved one being held in a war zone where bombs are falling. It just adds another layer of pain. And because of course, in any hostage situation, you simply don't know how it's going to end. So we were incredibly fortunate. A lot has happened in the last few years, or the last year and change since Sagi has come home. He's devouring life, but the scars remain, and I think that's perhaps one thing that they don't tell you in hostage parent school, as it were, or hostage advocate school. The trauma continues after your loved one is home. And so it's this interesting balance between the joy and embracing of a new reborn life, yet carrying what has happened along with you, yourself, and by association with that ex-hostage.
Thank you, Jonathan. The Secretary of U.S.A., thank you for keep maintaining this work and giving us all hope. I'm glad Sagi is okay. George, you were held by the Taliban, a non-state armed group that now functions as the de facto governing authority in Afghanistan, and you experienced firsthand what it means to be used as leverage. We're coming up on 1 year of you being home. Talk to me about how you have been able to transition back to normal life. Were there events or rituals that helped you with your recovery?
Yeah, thank you very much to everybody involved in that liberation. First of all, Moller and Spiha, Dr. Young, Paul Ellis, everybody at Spiha, the Foley Foundation, Hostage, U.S.A. I'm very grateful for being liberated after such a horrible nightmare. Definitely, my recovery has been helped, first of all, by the hard work of my beloved wife, Alexandra, my family, my sister, my niece, co-workers, and friends. The recovery, I thought it was going to be easier, but it's been a little bit hard, as expected by many, many people, and I was the last one to find out. Yes, I have some rituals. I had some rituals. I spent the last 9 months in recovery in the Republic of Georgia, and one of the first things that I started working on was my physical rebuilding. You know, started exercising. I used to get up early morning, go running up the hill to a monument and see the sunrise in the city of Tbilisi, the capital, and then, you know, being overtaken by that simple but moment that I was deprived by the Taliban. After that, I would come back home. Everybody would be awake, and we would go out for a cup of coffee. My wife, my mother-in-law, my brother-in-law, same coffee shop every morning. So simple, you know, talk about nothing and have a cup of coffee, and that simple ritual was so meaningful in my life because it was something that we take for granted, you know, just a simple cup of coffee with family. In the evening, I would be in the balcony, seeing the sunset and see the swallows fly around downtown Tbilisi, and I noticed that they whistle. I didn't know they whistle. I didn't even know they were swallows, you know. That stuff just helped me come back to my senses. And being in a hole for more than 2 years without a window, without natural natural air, deprived of all senses, you know, it was unreal. So coming back to my senses, it took a while. I'm still working on it with my wife, and I'm coming back.
We're glad you're coming back. When you came back, you said, I felt like a kid when he gets lost in the crowd in a shopping center or something. And suddenly your father finds you and takes you up and hugs you. And you feel safe. You feel home again.
Yeah, I remember that quote. It's funny you remember it. I forgot about it, but that's exactly how I felt when I crossed that gate at the airport in Kabul, and I've been held by different sets of hands by mean people, the Taliban, and suddenly the first face I see is Paul Ellis from Spiha, and he runs to me and embraces me and takes me away literally from the hands of the Taliban. And the second friendly face I see is Adam Boulder coming towards me and taking me, both of them, towards the aircraft, towards freedom, towards back to my life. Third face, friendly face I saw was Dr. Young, who stayed with me all the way back to, both of them, Paul and Dr. Young, stayed with me all the way to San Antonio, through Washington, D.C. So it was just like a kid being found in a crowd of unfriendly people, in this case, and being taken back home.
Thank you. Ronald, turning to you, you were detained in Venezuela and released in a negotiated exchange between El Salvador, the U.S., and Venezuela. You were one of 10 who returned home that day. What was it like to walk out of detention and return home alongside your brother and the other Americans that were released? How did that camaraderie among the group help you with your transition?
Thank you. Thank you for having me here today, and thanks for having the chance to share this with all you guys and incredible experiences. Coming out of prison, walking out of prison with my brother had a special meaning for me. For almost 7 months, he had been my protector, and being able to, and even in my lowest, he was there to help me stand up again. And I remember he always told me, if I get out before you, I will make sure you get out. And that meant a lot to me. He had always been my hero since I was a child. And so when we walked out of prison, seeing his freedom, even before thinking about my own, was an enormous relief. We had met the other Americans 6 weeks earlier, and during a first failed negotiation attempt. And I remember seeing them there that day was for me like, I felt there was a miracle for me also going to happen. But the day of our release, when I saw them again, and after so many lies and manipulations in prison, I was doubtful, but they were more hopeful, and I started in a way like borrowing a bit of their hope. And so it was incredible. During the first days, it was incredibly valuable to be surrounded by people who were also trying to adjust to life. And that created a sense of brotherhood. Incredible. And not only, we have not shared the same cells, we did not share the same areas in prison.
For being liberated. Everybody involved in that liberation, first of all, being liberated. The Foley Foundation hostage.